Hi, this is me from the future. I am going to say something real quick because I forgot about this entirely. I am also someone who's practicing drag. So if anyone's interested, my name is above. And I forgot to get rid of it when I was doing a makeup video earlier. So I did not notice it until the video was already recorded. Welcome to my channel. If you love your true crime dark, a little messy, and proudly queer, you're in the right place. And while you're here, be a dear. Hit that like and subscribe button and share it with someone who also lives for the drama. This is LGBT. Let's get back to talking. I'm Nico. Around here, we tell stories about queer lives, the ones that ended in headlines, or never made it that far. Some were victims, some were villains, most were complicated. So, pour a drink, take a breath. Let's get back to talking. Chicago, early 1920s. Jazz humming through the city like electricity. Prohibition pretending to be morality. And tucked behind moneyed doors and private tutors are two teenage boys who think they've cracked the universe. Nathan Leopold Jr. and Richard Loeb were rich. Not comfortably rich. They were untouchable rich. Their families were pillars of Chicago society, dripping in privilege, education, and expectation. Leopold was the brain, a child prodigy with an IQ that made adults uncomfortable. He spoke multiple languages, devoured philosophy, obsessed over Nietzsche, especially the idea of the Übermensch, the superior man, the one who exists beyond petty rules. Loeb was the charm, handsome, magnetic, reckless. He loved pulp novels, crime stories, the glamour of outsmarting the system, where Leopold was rigid and obsessive. Loeb was impulsive and bored. Together, they were a closed circuit, feeding each other fantasies, egging each other on, and slowly convincing themselves that the laws of ordinary people simply did not apply to them. This wasn't just arrogance. It was a volatile cocktail of adolescence, unchecked privilege, isolation, and desire. Because yes, they were lovers. Not openly, not safely, but intensely and unevenly. Leopold adored Loeb, worshipped him. Loeb enjoyed the devotion and exploited it. Their sexual relationship became transactional, tangled with power, secrecy, and manipulation. Leopold would do anything to keep Loeb close, including murder. The idea didn't come from rage, or desperation, or need. It came from boredom. Leopold and Loeb wanted to commit what they called the perfect crime. No motive, no witnesses, no remorse. A murder purely to prove they could do it. They planned meticulously. They rented a car under a false name. They chose a chisel as a weapon because they thought it was quiet and efficient. They decided on a ransom note to muddy the waters. All they needed was a victim. On May 21st, 1924, they found one. They picked up 14-year-old Bobby Franks, Loeb's distant cousin and neighbor. A bright kid, a chess player, someone who trusted them. He never stood a chance. Inside the car, Leopold gagged him, while Loeb struck Bobby repeatedly with the chisel. By the time the car stopped, Bobby Franks was dead. They dumped his body in a culvert near Wolf Lake, poured acid on his face to prevent identification, then, chillingly, went home to dinner. They mailed the ransom note. They thought they were flawless. Turns out, they were wrong. The body was found almost immediately. And then came the glasses. Near Bobby's body, police found a pair of distinct eyeglasses. Unusual hinges. Rare. The kind owned by exactly one person in the city. Nathan Leopold. When questioned, Leopold and Loeb were arrogant, calm, almost amused. They believed their intelligence would protect them, but alibis unraveled. The rental car story collapsed. The typewriter used for the ransom note was traced back to the Leopold household. The relationship, once a private engine of power, became a liability. Each boy began subtly shifting blame. Loeb minimized. Leopold confessed. The gods fell fast. Enter Clarence Darrow, the most famous defense attorney in America. A man who hated the death penalty with a religious intensity. Rather than plead insanity in a jury trial, which could end in hanging, Darrow did something radical. He pled them guilty, and then he spoke. For 12 hours. Darrow framed Leopold and Loeb not as monsters, but as products of youth, of indulgence, of psychological damage, of a society that fed them philosophy without morality. He spoke about determinism, about how no one is born evil, only shaped. He begged the judge not to kill two boys for a crime born of immaturity and hubris. The world listened. They were sentenced to life in prison. No gallows, no electric chair, just time. Prison stripped them of myth. Loeb, once the golden boy, struggled. In 1936, he was murdered in prison, slashed by a razor by another inmate. The official story was self-defense. Few mourned him. Leopold lived. He became a model prisoner, studied, taught, wrote, expressed remorse. Whether genuine or learned, history still debates. In 1958, after 33 years, Nathan Leopold was paroled. He moved to Puerto Rico, worked in a hospital lab. He lived quietly and died in 1971. No headlines, just a footnote. So why are Leopold and Loeb still with us? Because their story refuses to sit neatly. There were queer men in a time that offered no healthy language for desire. There were also sadistic killers who murdered a child for sport. Their queerness did not cause the crime, but it shaped the secrecy, the power imbalance, and the intensity of their bond. True crime has often used them as a warning, or a spectacle, or worse, a punchline. But if we're honest, their story is about what happens when privilege replaces accountability, when intelligence is mistaken for morality, and when desire curdles into domination. They weren't born monsters. They became them. And Bobby Franks paid the price. Before we close this story, we need to stop, because Leopold and Loeb left behind something true crime too often erases: a child. Bobby Franks was 14 years old. He was bright, curious, stubborn in that very specific teenage way. He loved baseball. He loved chess. He was close to his family. He had plans, small ones, ordinary ones, which is to say, sacred ones. He trusted the people who killed him, and that matters. Bobby was not a symbol. He was not a plot device. He was not collateral damage in a philosophical experiment dreamed up by two bored rich boys. He was a kid walking home from school. His life didn't end because of fate or destiny or some grand moral lesson. It ended because two people decided their curiosity mattered more than his existence. If we're going to tell this story, if we're going to keep telling it, then Bobby Franks deserves to be named, remembered, and centered. Leopold and Loeb linger because they make people uncomfortable in a very specific way. They were young. They were brilliant. They were queer. And they were monsters. True crime has a bad habit of sanding down those edges, turning them into archetypes, into aesthetics, into dangerous genius mythology. But there is nothing seductive about what they did. Their queerness does not absolve them. Their intelligence does not excuse them. Their trauma, real or imagined, does not outweigh the harm they caused. At the same time, pretending they were born evil lets the systems around them off the hook. Unchecked privilege, intellectual arrogance rewarded instead of challenged. Adults who mistook brilliance for maturity. A society that handed two boys every tool except empathy. This case forces us to hold multiple truths at once, and that's why it endures. You can acknowledge the pressures of repression without blaming repression. You can examine desire without glamorizing violence. And you can talk about queer history without turning killers into icons. If this story leaves a bad taste in your mouth, good. It should. You've been listening to LGBT. Let's get back to talking. I'm Nico, your host, your narrator, your slightly too interested gay friend with a microphone. And every week, we dig into queer lives, brushed out of the margins. The victims, the villains, and the beautifully complicated ones in between. If you like tonight's story, go ahead and follow, subscribe, leave a comment, or just whisper sweet nothings into the void. I hear everything. Until next time, pour a drink, take a breath. Let's get back to talking.